possible solutions to these pressing needs. We already started discussing yesterday morning and had a very good debate, so please continue in the spirit. And let me conclude with my parting and encouraging words. Allow innovation to provoke, challenge, and disrupt. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana Janet. Naomba tumpigie tena makofi sasa hivi ya nguvu kidogo. How is that, Janet? Asante sana. So as I said earlier, Mafuru Lawrence, the Executive Director of the Planning Commission, will be joining us momentarily. But as we wait for him, let me invite the Director, Business Environment Unit, President's Office, Planning and Investment. This is none other but Mr. Baraka Aligesha. Delighted to have him with us this morning. He's coming to make a presentation. And as he comes to make a presentation, I would also like all of us to focus on this presentation because it's going to look onto the business environment, on recent policy reforms in the country and their outcomes. So we've had the recent policy reforms, but we're also going to see from his presentation the outcomes, focusing on the reforms impact startups and early stage businesses. As it comes, ladies and gentlemen, let's accord him with a big round of applause. Karibu sana, Baraka Aligesha. Kurugenzi. Do I have a display here? Oh, yeah. Do you want to? Can I have a wireless mic?
No, but we can proceed.
I can speak from.
Jamani, habari za asubuhi. Good morning. Nilivyokuwa naambiwa nakuja kukutana na wajasiriamali ikabini I have to cock my mind kwa sababu when you become more formal, it's a problem to entrepreneur. I will do my best to make sure I do what I'm supposed to do. Naitwa Baraka Aligesha, ni mkurugenzi wa kitengo cha kuboresha mazingira ya biashara. We have been working with different stakeholders, particularly private sector, startup association and other players. Lakini wapo players wengine ambao walianza miaka mingi, wanaitwa wakina Kinu na nani, wamefanya kazi nzuri. Leo tutaongelea kidogo mambo gani tunayafanya na mambo gani tunayategemea kushirikiana na watu waliomo kwenye sekta, waliomo kwenye startup community, particularly early stage na wengineo. So I will try to use the both language interchangeably so that we can move together. I see some of our members here, they're not good in Swahili, but I will do my best to make sure I communicate with you. So kukuza to build better environment for startup, company and early stage business, we need to see something very important. I see most of us, we are meeting, it's very critical to our community. Number one is could be, I can say, the trust within us, as well as facilitating each other to make sure we achieve what we intend to do in a startup ecosystem. This earlier, we highlighted and we want to see the private sector as well as the public sector focus much on it because we can get the better policy, the better laws, the better legislation to favor the sector. So I will look into introduction 7 items. So number one, what we do in a reform, program for reform. Most important thing for the startup ecosystem, what we have been implementing, and other measures we have taken, and we see if they are really in favor of the startup and early stage, but we'll rather also be happy to get the input from the key player into the industry. So we started to do the reform. Why do we do reform? What do we consider? The presence of good policy and law, stability of political stability, and na ustahimilivu wa siasa zetu, infrastructure that are facilitative to our early startup, and the quality of human resource, and which I see in our ecosystem, we need to focus on it. And any country is trying to do these 4 fundamental things if you want really to have the better environment that favor the early startup, the innovation, and any other company. We started, I will demonstrate when we started to implement the blueprint. The blueprint, we started in 2018, and now we are in 2024, and oh, yes. I'm running very fast. Can I use this? I think I'm not comfortable on using this. Okay, so our main purpose to carry out this reform, we are to look into the laws and regulations. Number 2, to look into the fees and levies, and where you see some part of the tax. I have heard about moratorium. And number 3, to see the regulatory body that are actually overlapping and that are causing some challenge to our private sector. And number 4 was to look about our electronic system that do offer the service. The most important part in our ecosystem, that where we focusing more into the reform, we look into the policy and law. Yes, we understand there are other things that are very critical, including financing. That's where we see the end of fundings, and my colleague have mentioned this. We understand this, the startup or community is very important. We want to see also the area of the business development service is very important, and the area of research and innovation is very important. But for us, we focus on laws and regulations and procedure that are very important for any business to thrive. So the critical challenge we are seeing in our startup ecosystem, particularly startup community, we are somehow not serious, but we are somehow disorganized to address our challenge. We have different perspectives that whoever making policy, making laws, it's very hard to meet the expectation. What we did, we have managed into the program to implement. We promised to do the reforms for 88 laws. We managed to achieve 55. And for fees and levies, out of 380, we have achieved 374. We have managed to attend overlapping responsibility over 20 regulatory bodies. So if you see this, we want to see, do they really favor the startup? Do they really fit this reform we are doing? Do they really fit the startup? We decided we have highlighted very few of them. Number 1, exemption of product registration within regulatory body. Number 1, as Tanzania Bureau of Standard. As you understand, there is a concern in along the ecosystem, the startup, we have to find some of the regulatory body to relax their implementation at least 1 to 2 to 3 years. And some countries have gone to 5 years. For us, in 2018, we managed to convince the government to achieve at least for product registration that was critical for early business startup, particularly the SME, to be exempted in product registration fees and the other related costs for sampling. That was totaling almost 8 to 10 million. It depends with geographical location of the entrepreneur. This was achieved. We looked into the presumptive income tax, where the 20 million you have to pay the tax. Even the 20 million turnover itself is the cost for paying tax consultants. We have flipped it up to 100 million. And no more audited report, audited financial statement to be submitted for any business below, any business below 100 million. And we went further. We are investing much on one-stop center, facilitation center. We understand people need to cut costs, procedure, and times. So we are investing in one-stop center facilitation. We have few of them at our port. We have few of them in the TIC, and also we are embarking in the local government and building the capacity of the local government to be able to serve the private sector, including the startup. We did amendment in the TIC Act to look into the threshold of the capital that qualify for incentivizing the entire legal framework of supporting the local investor, where the threshold price was 100,000 US dollar, now is 50,000 USD. But there was a big discussion why this is the threshold is going down so much. The water was maybe there is a chance of people escaping paying tax, but really if you want to gain, to be inclusive, to promote innovation, to promote the excluded group, you must see trade-off. That's some of the few areas. My question will, do this measure support the early business and startup? So, I wish, having highlighted some of the areas we have did reforms, I will rather say the government has started to include the startup policy and action into our entire sectoral policies. Number one, the Tanzania Digital Economy Strategy Framework. You will see that area is really pinpointed and highlighted properly to build a better environment for ecosystem in the ICT industries. We are working with the private sector into our SME policy to make sure the startup into that particular area are highlighted, and we have already guided the other sector to make sure they include the startup action into their policy. I want to demonstrate very few institutions that are working along this area, including the PMO, Ministry of Industry and Trade, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Information, Communication Technology, COSTECH, TIDO. Those are government counterparts supporting along the ecosystem and the space of the startup. I do understand I not want to go much into the other private sector initiatives, but I do understand there are key players that are very important in a space of the ecosystem, or those we call Kyoto, Buni, DTI, Sahara Ventures, and the other accelerator, and the others that are along the ecosystem, but they along work with government institutions. So for us as government, as I say, our job is not to create law that deter your business. Our job is to create environment that make your business start, expand, grow, that protect your capital. We will want to hear more from you. What do you want us to do better? But also, for me, I see this week we could discuss the meaning, the definition of startup, the definition of kampuni changa bunifu. We should also look at how we are collaborating each other within the startup community. Because as a policymaker, if startup community is not organized, it's very tough for me, it's very tough for any policy worker, it's very tough for government to reach the consensus. We do expect to have this discussion from you and have good advice to move forward into this area. We have to see, as I said, in our policy, we have started to articulate the startup issues. The most important, I see there is a pressing agenda of the specific policy for startup, specific law for startup. But what is the practice of the other countries? What are they doing? Do they really have the startup specific, dedicated, that cut all sectors, or they just have some particular intervention in each sector, depending on each sector? The good thing, if you see the ecosystem in the ICT industry is doing well into our country, is doing better into our country. So we have to have good discussion on this area so that we can have a fruitful engagement with government and we are led. But having good discussion on this area, we should not forget to keep pressing on the importance of research and development, capital. There are very few players, and I think liquidity is not supportive to the innovator that are existing current in our industries. If we look into funding of the innovation at early stage, our financial system, that should be our discussion too. Because if we are going to focus only on the fiscal incentive, it's going to be tough to meet other costs for the product to be into the market within the 1 year. I see the most discussion, I'm very happy I had one of our presenter mentioned the moratorium for 1 year. That's perfect, but I see one of the proposals that was coming from the prayers into the startup climbing 5 years exemption. Therefore, that will not be anymore viable into the market with full of innovations. So those are the things we have to really discuss and engage with government, and we are open. You are the people to provide the solution. You are the people doing the business into the industry. So the most also important thing to me is honesty, partnership, and I should say asante sana.
Thank you so much. Baraka, this is where I come to you and request, although you're not prepared for it, but if you can allow me to ask you a couple of questions from your presentations. If that is okay with you, then I would like to really go one-on-one with you. Okay?
Thank you. I'm okay. I'm always okay to serve you.
Asante sana Baraka. This was quite a presentation, and I believe I'll ask you not very many questions, not very technical questions, but questions related to your presentation. This is what you do on day to day. So I have no doubt on whether you'll not be able to respond to my question. So yesterday afternoon, we had a session where we were looking on to research to commercialization. And one of the participants during that session really asked a very pertinent question. I would really wish to pose it to you. Also, I've seen a couple of things you've mentioned on your presentation, but this particular question, it kept me thinking, and I'm happy to ask this question. So he cited an example of China. I would like to cite an example of Mauritius. Countries that really have put innovation at heart, whereby we have in Tanzania special economic processing zones. Why don't we have in Tanzania spatial innovation spaces or zones whereby innovators could come, not like the Silicon Valley, but something close to that, whereby now if we have, for instance, the donor community, EU said they have lots of money, they do not know where to take that, where we have the donor community, the government, and my next question will be on the institution that you mentioned earlier on, but whereby anyone who wants to support the ecosystem, they actually know where to go. Could be from training, you've mentioned a couple of training institutions, but a space whereby innovators could really feel that they're in there. The moment you're there, you know, you've got your 10-year or 5-year exemption from taxes. My brother, where is he? Spoke about starting an organization, and within the moment you register BRELA, the moment TRA is next to you with a big smile, yeah, tapping their feet down like that. So as the department responsible, I would really wish to pick from your brains, why don't we as a country think of now innovation spaces so that we can have innovation really thrive? I do not know if you want to go one-on-one or you want to respond to that, then I take the next question. Should I give you my 3 questions?
Yes, I think I can respond.
I was referring to that gentleman yesterday. He spoke about the moment you register with TRA, with BRELA, TRA is behind your neck.
I think well, number one, I want to say that the mindset is very important too. The mindset.
Is this mic on?
I think the most important I want to highlight is very important. I start with your second question and go back to the first one.
Right.
For the revenue authority, it's quite our legal system sometimes was pressing, but I want to make it clear that if you have got, I mentioned one thing, skills. The quality of human resource is very important. TRI will never come to your door and do harm things if every document are very clear. But we must admit the cost of obtaining that service to comply might be very high, and that's why we're working backward into the reforms, how the tax consultant they're behaving. And if you see some of the challenge within the revenue authority and the private sector, is all about the skills, the record keeping, and the enterprises management. It's not about the laws, it's about the mindset between the public and the private sector.
While at it, and allow me to kindly interject.
Yes.
It is not, I don't think if the problem is the mindset. Otherwise, you'll then have to have me ask you, whose mindset? I think the issue that was raised by my brother behind you is, I have not even started doing business. I've just registered. And then I'm already obliged to, you know, meet some tax obligations. Karibu.
Yes, I understand. What I was trying to say, you have registered my business, and I have not started to operate.
Right.
You have to, our law currently want to file what you are doing. You are not charged tax on the profit that does not exist.
All right.
We don't charge tax on the business that does not make profit. So if our system demands us to keep the record currently, and that's how the laws is formulated, you want to change it.
Okay.
That's number one.
Right.
It might be a challenge. That's why I'm saying we have to invest also to the business development service to continue to support the industry. Number two, the innovation space. You want to have the special zone into that area. I want to say in our plans, in our government plans, our Bagamoyo Special Economic Zone, we have already indicated particular technopark that will also cater for the innovators into that space. We want to invest more capital. I wouldn't say that we should move for donor, because that's business you have to invest too. It's not charity, but to have to support our innovator to excel within our system. If you were the donor, that doesn't work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will, now that we have Mr. Mafuro with us, so I'll finish with my final question. As he prepares for his opening remarks right after my next question, Mr. Baraka, you've answered my question very well, and I'm delighted that you have, especially that you've already highlighted that we're going to Bagamoyo for the innovation space. But in relation to that, I'm looking on to it as well, financing, you've tackled that as well. On your presentation, you mentioned 18, I counted 18 ministries as well as agencies that all work towards supporting innovation or innovation space, or ensuring that innovation really thrives in Tanzania. My question to you, which again popped out yesterday, was, and I thought about it, why don't we just have one entity responsible for innovation, so that, you know, if anyone wants to run towards innovation, they know where to go. Right now, young innovators present, young researchers present, if they want to go onto the innovation space, where do they go? Do they go see Jumanne at Sahara Sparks? Do they go to see Joe at Funguo? Do they go to see Dr. Nungu at Costec? Or Kundwe at Core ICT? Where do they go? There was such a comment yesterday that why don't we have, in fact, the literal statement was, why don't we have a Ministry of Innovation? I'm sure Mafur would mention this when it comes to speak as well, but over to you, Mr. Baraka.
Mr. Bakana, I think that's a good question. If you ask me that question, I will say that's a good discussion we have to move forward with, because we will not be the first one to have the separate institution that work for innovation. And that's what I have said. We need, in a startup community, to come together and see what should be our priority toward improving our ecosystem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm delighted to say that Mr. Mafuro, the Executive Director for the Planning Commission, is with us. We're looking onto innovation space, the innovation ecosystem for startups as well as the early stage businesses in Tanzania. He's coming to give us the keynote, the welcoming remark. Let's accord him with a big round of applause as he comes to speak to us. Karibu sana, Mr. Mafuro.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. And first and foremost, I really want to apologize for not being here on time. There was a bit of a confusion on the timing. I traveled from Arusha, Dodoma, and it's been an overnight transit. So managing the morning was quite a challenge. But I thought I must be here because of the importance of the subject matter. This was supposed to be a show for the Minister, the Honorable Minister, Professor Kitila Mkumbo, who was the target for this audience. Sometimes mid this week, he called me up and said he couldn't make it, and he was trying to ask me if I can come over here. I have a lot of things that are lined up, and I tried to negotiate, but when I thought about the subject matter, I thought it's important, and I have a particular interest on the subject, and I thought I should squeeze in some time. So on behalf of the Minister, Professor Kitila Mkumbo, who was supposed to be here, to address this audience, he prepared his speech. When your principal sends you to represent him somewhere, you need to say what he wanted to say. Ordinarily, I struggle reading speeches, but because I have to say what the minister wanted to say, please bear with me. I will try and read his speech. My colleagues prepared a paper speech, and I said I'm going to an audience that is digital savvy and innovation technology. I'm going to use my iPad to deliver a speech. So I'm trying to look the party, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, first on I thank the Almighty God for the opportunity to participate in this event. And like I said, I am doing this on behalf of the Minister, who extends you his warmest greetings and gratitude from Dodoma, where he's currently attending the parliamentary activities. I understand this year's Innovation Week themed Innovation for Competitive Economy, or in Kiswahili, Ubunifu kwa Uchumi Shindani, with 5 thematic focuses or focus areas, namely innovation for digital transformation, innovation for green economy, innovation for financial inclusion, innovation for inclusive human capital development, and innovation for blue economy and tourism. These are all relevant themes for Tanzania development agenda, and therefore there's simply no way either myself or Professor Kitila could have avoided this audience. So we want to commend the organizers for choosing such a relevant not only theme, but also the thematic principles that have been outlined here. This comes at a point when Tanzania is drafting its Vision 2050 as its next round of blueprint, which will determine the destiny of many of us here in the room who have a much longer equity in the future. And I'm looking around the room, it looks like the vision really is meant to address the future of the people sitting in the room, assuming that we all live the biblical years that we've been given. So if you look around, looks like all of you will be beneficiaries of the vision. And at this point, I'd like to urge you to really participate actively in shaping the vision. And I had a question just being asked here, why don't we have one innovation point? That's a kind of a view we would like to hear. If people want us to have a one go-to point where innovations will be determined, and in a broader context of embracing all the paraphernalia of innovation, technology, digital, and stuff like that, then so be it. We would like to pick that as one of the initiatives that Tanzanians would like to see in their next vision. Today's session aims at discussing policy reforms and business environment for startups in Tanzania. This session intends to define and ultimately table possible solutions on fostering collaboration between government, development partners, and private sector to create an enabling environment for innovation and entrepreneurship by showcasing the progress made through recent policy reforms and engaging in meaningful dialogue, hence catalyzing further efforts towards building a vibrant startup ecosystem in Tanzania. Ladies and gentlemen, respective to the national development frameworks, including the Tanzania Development Vision TDV 2025, that is currently approaching its last 1.5 year, and its operational instruments, namely the 5-year Development Vision 2025 and its other annual development plans that we prepare every year. The government is committed towards embracing technological progress and fostering innovation as crucial input for economic growth, job creation, and overall development. And this can be evidently seen from Section 5.36 of the FYDP3, those of you who can access it. It is very well articulated there. So, ladies and gentlemen, the government is, in collaboration with stakeholders, has been undertaking various initiatives to support innovation in the country, and I'd like to outline a few here. Investing in digital infrastructure such as the ICT broadband backbone, NICTBB. The broadband has been connected to all regional headquarters and all major urban centers in the country. It has also been extended to 7 neighboring countries to ensure regional connectivity. As you know, Tanzania is very well placed geographically to be the connecting hub for the other landlocked surrounding countries in the Great Lakes region and East Africa. Establishing of Tanzania Innovation Initiative, TII, the initiative serves as a dynamic platform that follows innovators and entrepreneurs to showcase their ideas and receive from different stakeholders. Establishment of innovation hubs and incubators throughout the country. These hubs create a supportive environment for startups, providing them with the necessary resources and support to thrive. Notable examples include the Dar Technohama Business Incubator, located in Dar es Salaam. The incubator offers co-working spaces, mentorship, business training, network opportunities, and access to funding specifically tailored for technology startups. And of course, encouraging ICT innovators or innovative solutions, especially in public sector delivery, by developing e-government system whereby key services are provided through digital platform. Ladies and gentlemen, at structural and policy level, the government has established research in innovation section under the Directorate of Policy and Planning, aiming at inducing application innovation solutions into development interventions. These initiatives pave the way towards utilization of options and solutions provided by researchers and innovation hubs. Further, the government continues to emphasize on collaboration with stakeholders, including development partners, NGOs, CSOs, on implementation of national policy, science for technology and innovation, and provision of innovation funding and support. Ladies and gentlemen, focusing on business environment for startups, the government, in collaboration with stakeholders, is working towards developing the national startup policy. The intervention is informed by a comparative baseline survey on establishing of the startup policy in Tanzania, undertaken by ESRF in 2022. The survey involved consultation with stakeholders, including Tanzania Startup Association, TSA, to identify a number of challenges from which solutions will be provided by the policy through establishing national position, legal and regulatory framework, and improving institutional structure on startup in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, despite notable achievement in initiatives to improve innovation spectrum in the country, still there are challenges that are facing this area. These include inadequate funding of innovation interventions, limited utilization of innovation solutions into development plans and implementation, brain drain and talent retention, and limited awareness, understanding, and knowledge on innovation matters. Ladies and gentlemen, from today's discussion then, and evidence gathered throughout in this Innovation Week, the government and stakeholders intend to seek and think through solutions from which aforementioned challenges can be solved. In that regard, we look forward really that this gathering here should inform and continue to challenge the status quo and pushing the agenda forward, especially because there are one major headwinds that Tanzanians should not ignore. It is this headwind of technological advancement. It is a wind that is blowing. Going against it or not taking part in it is simply shooting ourselves in the foot. So we believe that as we again determine and decide what Tanzania should look like in the next 25 years, I urge the people, the ladies and gentlemen sitting in this room, to be open-minded, and in that regard, the views and opinions that are going to come up through this policy should really aim at improving our policies, challenging our regulatory framework and institutional structure to ensure that technology and its paraphernalia becomes the game changer of our development agenda. On those few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to congratulate you for putting this together and wishing you very successful deliberations. Na kazi iendelee. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana, Mr. Lawrence Mafuru, the Executive Director, Planning Commission, for delivering the remarks on behalf of the Minister of Planning, pamoja na uwekezaji hapa Tanzania. Thank you very much. Distinguished participants, as I mentioned earlier, we have our colleagues from the British High Commission in Kenya, and we have the Deputy Country Director, UK Kenya Tech Hub, Mr. Enos Masinde Westwa. Delighted to bring him to the stage now to give us some insights on the startup ecosystem in Kenya. Again, as I reiterated earlier on, we're looking onto innovation for competitive economy. That is our theme But the session today here is going to ponder on policy reforms and business environment kwa zile startups ambazo zinakuja, lakini pia early stage businesses. As he comes, let's give him a big round of applause. Karibu sana, Enos. We'll then have, after Enos's presentation or remarks, we'll have Jumanne Mtambalike, CEO Sahara Ventures, to reflect on what has transpired so far, and then we'll go on to the panel. Karibu.
Good morning, everybody. Habari za asubuhi. I hadn't prepared a speech. I was preparing for the panel, so you'll have to forgive me. But it's an honor to speak to you this morning. As you've heard, my name is Enos Weswa from the British High Commission in Nairobi, and I run a department in the British High Commission called the UK Kenya Tech Hub. So with the focus actually is in Kenya, going by the name, but at least we had some deliberation and thought we could have a regional support, and that is why I'm here. So delighted to be here. So all protocol observed, I think I'll just give a very quick overview of lesson learned and how the startup ecosystem is in Kenya. I've worked in the startup ecosystem for about 12 years, starting my own company way back, and then working with about 8 accelerator programs, actually 3. So you can see you're way ahead. And then we had some conversation with very wonderful people in the ecosystem, and they noted that your first hub came into being, I think it is in 2010. I stand to be corrected. But ours, that's the iHub, was in 2009. So we are really not quite far apart in terms of the innovation ecosystem. But I think what Kenya has done is that we probably have gone faster, and I'll just highlight what has really accelerated that kind of outcome. Given that at the moment, I think we are top as the destination for startup fund, raised about 1.1 billion USD, which was a 33% increment from the previous one, even that was for 2003. And just to note that that is about 23% of the total African investment in startups. So just looking at what really made that acceleration happen is that a lot of these things were informed way earlier by the Vision 2030, as well as the digital economy blueprint. I happened to attend an event for Smart Africa. I don't know how many of you know Smart Africa? Okay, so a few of you know Smart Africa. So Smart Africa is an organization that was brought up by heads of state in Africa trying to see how can we make the Africa economy more digital, and of course the digital economy has very many benefits in growing the economy. And so Kenya was tasked to actually draft a digital economy master plan for Africa. And that digital economy master plan really had quite a number of very interesting things. We had something called, and I would love that all of you can check that. If you just Google, I'm sure you can
see that digital economy master plan. Actually, it's similar to the one we launched in Kigali for the digital economy master plan for Africa. And of course, it highlights a number of things. It highlights the digital business, which is digital entrepreneurship, being supported by the digital infrastructure. And I know the digital infrastructure is quite a huge piece of really accelerating some of these things. We also have the digital governance and digital government, and accessing government services digitally. We have, I think, about 3,000 government services online, which I think all of you, I'm sure most East African countries are also working towards digitizing government services. So we also are aware what other countries are doing, but I think we also went to learn from our brothers in Rwanda. They have done theirs in a very good way. I think it's called Irembo. And you find that this really facilitates startups to plug in and to understand what the government is doing, because there has to be a link between the government and the community as well. And then I think also many hubs came about and the universities were involved and they became aware. But at earlier stage, we also involved the Kenya National Innovation Agency, Kenya, and I know some of you came for our Innovation Week, that's last year, being led by the Kenya, which is an agency under the government. Now, there are all these pieces that came together and made the acceleration of the startup ecosystem thrive. But other than that, I think also there's quite a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit, which I think also is in this country. I've seen it. And I think being led by the youth to really create businesses. And there was quite a lot of that translated into startups. But also our economy is largely SME driven. About 80% is SME driven. But now the challenge that we had initially was that there was really no difference, or rather differentiator, or rather a definition that differentiated between an SME and a startup, and also that really might have worked against us in the long run. And why am I saying that? I think when I was working with one accelerator program, I think it was the first accelerator program in Kenya, was called Upwiz. So Upwiz, and I think also just to talk about the ecosystem players who met or who accelerated that ecosystem. Upwiz came about because of a collaboration between a university and a corporate. And that's just the power of that collaboration. So there was Strathmore University and there was Safaricom. And I know most of you have heard of Safaricom. So Safaricom has been a very big player to accelerating the startup ecosystem, because they created the first accelerator program. And Upwiz, we did run Upwiz for 3 years under the Strathmore University. And what we did, we involved Strathmore students, but it was open to all. We got quite interesting companies, and one company was absorbed by Safaricom, called, the startup is called Mleja. And this is just to underpin the fact that when you have good collaboration in the ecosystem, then things are bound to be accelerated real quick. And then we also had I think one of the very interesting accelerator programs that I will mention, which is facilitated by a bank, it's called Women in Tech. Again, we created that, and it was collaboration with Strathmore University and Standard Chartered Bank, and they did what we call Women in Tech. Was quite successful. We've had about 2 startups who are actually this year they were amongst the list of those that attracted the funding. All right, so I've just painted a picture of who really started and accelerated that sort of ecosystem, but also to mention, of course, it stems from the government, and then to couple with the corporates and the university, and now they support the ESOs, what we call Enterprise Support Organization. So again, we we founded an organization called ASEC, that is Association of Startups and SME Enablers of Kenya, and they've been also carrying a lot of awareness on what it means to run a startup and all that. But 2021 is when we tried to draft a bill. Okay, so that's just in relation to the enabling environment and policy conversation. So the bill was a Senate bill, not a parliament bill, but a Senate bill. And of course, it captured a single organization. I know we've mentioned about that in some of the conversation. It actually appointed the Kenya to be the overarching body for registering startups, and again defined what startups are to be innovation-driven enterprise. And I think from MIT, the definition of a startup is innovation-driven enterprise. And you'll find that they are quite different from an SME, and in like 3 ways. Because an SME is a self-sustaining business, and all you need are inventory, and they can actually access loans against the collateral, as well as they can access facilities like LPO financing and all that, but a startup can't. But a startup is set to scale, which really requires market. And that's why we were asking, are we as a country able to scale a startup? Perhaps not. And that's why I think also this requires some regional conversation in terms of expanding markets to grow those startups. The other thing is uncertainty, which really requires a lot of testing. And that's why the importance of incubation centers, of hubs. Hubs really are involved in validation testing and all that. Then, of course, there's a lot of product development, and universities are good at product development. They give that enabling environment, and so things like prototyping, which are expensive, and that's why attracting investment is quite key. I know we've mentioned about Malaysia, and not Malaysia, but we've talked about some countries that are really doing a good job in terms of attracting funds, attracting VC funds, specifically VC funds. And of course, we'll, I think, discuss more in terms of what are the regulations around really attracting this VC fund to actually fund the product development and the scaling, because scaling needs market as well as financial resources. So I think I'll stop there because I have quite a number of things that I had highlighted and happy to share them on the panel. Thank you so much.
Asante sana, Enos, and you know, many times when you're speaking, I kept on reflecting on the brief session we had in the morning yesterday, and what I had underscored, collective efforts coming together. And I think some of the lessons I've personally drawn from your presentation is the fact that, you know, you bring many players together to work together. And I think, and I rightly stand to be corrected, I think it's a lesson that we also need to learn. You know, if we're going towards the same direction, we ought to, you know, be together and go towards the same direction. But I guess this will also feature onto what Jumanne Mtambalike, the CEO of Sahara Ventures, and of course the board member of TSA, will come and give us a reflection. You know, since the launch of Innovation Week on Tuesday and the Medium Symposium on Monday, you've been keenly following up on the proceedings, together with the presentation we've had today, what has been transpiring during the week. And really, Jumanne, for you is to sharpen up and tell us what next ought to be done in the innovation space, but looking onto the fact that we're looking onto the business environment for startups and the early stage businesses. Akiwa anakuja sasa, naomba tuchangamke. There's not been any teaser, nor any warm-up activity. People are seated like they've not had breakfast in the morning, and we had such a fantastic breakfast. Tumpigie makofi basi as a warm-up exercise. Karibu. We have a forum, a panel discussion shortly after, looking onto the innovation ecosystem and the space for startups in Tanzania. Mr. Mafuru, tutapenda kupata reflection yako after the panel discussion. I believe muda utaendelea kukuruhusu ili tuweze kuona sasa where do we move from here as we advance the space forward. Asante. Karibu Jumanne.
Good morning. Why so serious? Namkaje jamani? Msikasirike, biashara zenye ngumu za mkasirika hiyo. Anyway, good morning once again. I was informed my role is just to reflect from what has been discussed. So I'll start from Baraka, and then to my good brother Mafuru, and then I'll finish with what Eno shared. Before I start, my name is Jumanne Mtambalike. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sahara Ventures. We're going to be 10 years old next year. So as a group, we've seen this and that, we've done this and that. We have survived all the waves, including COVID-19. So we have a lot to share and a lot of books to write. So basically, I'm also playing a role as a founding and board member of Tanzania Startup Association, an umbrella organization we started a couple of years ago to literally discuss how can we create a conducive environment for startups in Tanzania. And for those who don't know, part of it was because of the conversation I had with the late Ali Mufuluki. I remember CEO Roundtable once organized a meetup between the old and the emerging CEOs. And I was told to give a keynote in that meeting. And I went all ahead and ranting, telling them why they are not supporting the young guys. They are also entrepreneurs. They know what we're going through. Why are they not investing in startups? And among so many good responses, some of them was, we created this platform to solve our problems. Can you create your own platforms? And then when we left, part of what Aspire was to try to create a platform that can represent startups in Tanzania and communicate our messages. Because what we came to realize, the problems that a 20-year-old logistic company is facing is very different from a 2-year-old company that is struggling to pay tax. So fast forward right now, from the TSA recent report, there are more than 842 startups, most of them operating in SaaS, software as a service, and agri-tech. These startups have been able to create more than 100,000 jobs, and most of them are being run by young people aged between 24 to 35. In a country where median age is 18 years old, Possibly an average Tanzanian will be younger for the next 30 years, qualifying to be called young people according to the official definition of the government. And when you're living in a place where our rate of growth as a country, we are told by 2030, the city of Dar es Salaam will attain what they call a mega city status. We're going to have more than 10 million people living in there, and possibly Dar es Salaam by 2100 will be the third largest city in the world. So if you look at those things, this is a generation that will shape the future of this country. Getting back to the core issue and what Baraka was saying, first of all, Baraka, that was a very good presentation. And the reason I'm saying this is because of how he was presenting and sharing. Keyword, we are here to serve you. Government is not our enemy, and this is our country, and we're looking to fix it together. The role of a regulator, basically, is not to police, but actually to facilitate, to create a level playing field so that we can be able to build businesses that can eventually create socio-economic impact and transform lives, something which we're all looking to achieve as a country. Part of what Baraka discussed was also the importance of human resources. We have to invest in human capital. Enos did a presentation about what is happening in Nairobi. If you look at the Google and IFC report on the size of internet economy in Africa, part of why we are left behind is because of number of enterprise-level software developers who are available in Nairobi compared to those who are available in Dar es Salaam. So we have to be very intentional in terms of investing in human capital for startups, for future, for these new types of businesses, because these new types of businesses need young people with 4 Cs. Young people who can think critically, young people who are creative, young people who can collaborate, and young people who can communicate effectively. So that's, again, is the role of our education institutions to be able to do that. From what Baraka said, we need to look beyond physical incentives. I clearly agree, and I'll add something. We have to look beyond government, because government is also a player in the startup ecosystem. And it's a crucial player, but it's not the only player. We need to unlock local investment landscape. Happy to see my brother here from Warioba Ventures, if you can clap for them. It's very important to have the likes of Serengeti Angels, Warioba Ventures, and others promoting local investment landscape, because there's no way you can build startup without local investors. Corporates have a very special role to play. They need to move beyond hackathons and demo days to actually get their hands dirty. We need to see corporate venture capital. I still say I need to see one of those 2 banks establishing a VC wing to invest in startup beyond marathons. Don't get me in trouble with CRTV. That's a grant, not an investment. Anyway, so we need to see the likes of Finca Ventures. We need to see the likes of SC Ventures actually being more intentional about investing in startup and unlocking capital to startup. And I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm trying to say real issues that are facing our startup ecosystems. That goes beyond government. For something that was also shared about Bagamoyo Special Economic Zone, I worked for Costec, by the way, for 5 years before I went private sector. I still feel we need those special economic zones, but it's not an issue of just buildings and infrastructure. Otherwise, we're just going to be a traditional real estate project. We need to be very strategic about them in terms of what those zones will do, what types of partnerships, what kind of systems, what processes we need to put in place so that we can be able actually to make meaningful use of them. And these communities that support startups, they're just beyond infrastructures and buildings. There's a lot of services and other activities that need to go in place. What we're very happy is our president's commitment, Honorable Samia Suluhu Hassan. She has come in public several times saying that she has interest with startup companies and what they can do for young people, and she is a good supporter of what we're trying to do. So we have the government commitment. That is a plus. How we build on top of that is extremely important. Again, my good brother Baraka also talked about localization of some of these innovations, the role of regulator being a facilitator, And then there was also a discussion about the Ministry of Innovation. Yes, innovation is a cross-cutting thing. Maybe it's just a bit too much to ask for just a ministry for a single thing like innovation. But what I think we need to go beyond policies and documents. We need to build structures that support those policies. We need to have frameworks that can measure the performance of those innovation and other policies that we are putting together. It's good that Honorable Minister has signed the National Innovation Framework. For those who don't know, it is available. It's a tool. It shows part of our indicators and how we align with other documents on East Africa and Africa at large. So it's key to try to see how we can have more of those tools. We need to have a National Innovation Scorecard that can help us to rank ourselves on how we perform on things like Global Innovation Index and Global Competitive Index. These are very important too. So it goes beyond policy and policy documents. I was in Morogoro for 5 days, and part of our work there, we are reviewing the science and technology policy of 1996. It's fascinating. The person who wrote the policies in the room is 30 years older than me, and I was asking the guy, how did they manage to write a policy that has been relevant for 30 years and still almost 50% of what is written hasn't been done, you know, including that 1% money that is supposed to be spent on research and development. So the point here is these are just documents. If we don't put systems and structures in place to execute what is written on those documents, they will continue to be very nice pieces of document. And it will be a trend of Kenya has a digital framework, Rwanda has a digital framework, can we have our own? You know, it's become like a more stylish thing. So I think that is very, very important. It's good now we are into Vision 2050, and to be honest, it's been a very inclusive process. I've been reached out with so many of colleagues asking us to share our thought about the process, and again, I would like all of us to share our process, our thought into the process, because it's very crucial. It's going to shape the future of our country. We as a NABLA, I'm talking about Sahara Ventures, where we have our consulting wing, our accelerator, and a marketplace. Our role is to basically complement what is happening. Our role is to work with different partners in the ecosystem. Our role is to try to strategically align with the priorities of the government and other players of the ecosystems. The platform is open for anyone to do what they want to do. The most important thing is everyone to play their role. University needs to produce the right talent. Government needs to put in place the right policies. Investors need to unlock capital. Entrepreneurship support organizations, they need to actually produce high quality businesses. Kwa kila mtu akifanya kazi yake, policies actually will be moving from just being document to things that can be implemented. But also to finalize from what Enos was saying, when you look at the big fours, and I was telling my sister, I go to Nairobi roughly 8 to 10 times every year. I've already gone 4 times this year. And I've been coming to Ngong when still iHub was just at an infant stage. I was sent there by COSTECH in 2011 to study the digital fabrication laboratory at the University of Nairobi. We went to Gearbox and all those platforms to see what they're happening. I think one of the crucial things that is happening in Kenya is investing so much into talent and human capital. And we need facilities, we need open-minded institutions like Strathmore, where we can invest in creating this talent that can actually spearhead our mission toward a smart generation. This is also an opportunity for us, maybe, to join a Smart Africa Alliance. It's a very good alliance, been attending the event, and I know our president, she's very open-minded and future thinking, and this is a very good platform because Smart Africa Alliance is all about how to shape the future of Africa through technology and innovation. I agree with you, we need to see more collaboration between university and private sector. University needs to move beyond third generation universities now to even fourth generation universities. University needs to move beyond just academic and research to incorporate innovation, entrepreneurship, and community engagement. University needs to move from publishing papers for promotion and titles such as doctor and professors to create actual solutions to our society. That being said, we need to create a next generation of young Tanzanian startup founders and entrepreneurs. Initiatives such as Startup School are very key. I'm tired to see the same faces for 10 years. We need to see new founders, we need to see new ventures with disruptive solutions, and we need to attract more capital for the betterment of our country. And also to push you to the limit, the African narrative, rising narrative, still isn't that real. The global VC landscape, and in terms of the VC investment that is coming in the continent, is still less than 3%. So as much as we are very happy with the 5 billion that has come to our continent, the amount of capital that is coming to Africa is still less compared to the capital goes to the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, a very small portion that's smaller than Morogoro. Thank you so much.
Asante sana, Jumanne Mtambalike, Sahara Ventures, and good luck on your 10th anniversary next year. And we look forward to great milestones ahead with the Funguo Innovation Week program. Without further ado, na nisingependa kusema mambo mengi sana with regards to what Jumanne has said. It's come to kind of sum up what has transpired for the day. Allow me now to call my panelists straight onto the stage. To begin with, naomba nimkaribishe, and let's put our hands together for Mr. Charles Misheto. Charles is the head of SME banking at the Stanbic Bank. He accumulates 10 years plus experience in finance, transitioning Stanbic SME positioning from traditional to a digital banking. At a personal level, is very active in the fintech space. Naomba tumpigie tena makofi. I would also like to invite Lillian Sechelela Madeje. Let's give her a big round of applause. She's the founder of Niajeri platform and also a board member of Tanzania Startup Association. She's passionate about how innovation and human capital development interact. She has over 13 years of work experience in the human capital development here in Tanzania, as well as starting over 4 businesses over the past 10 years. Let's give another round of applause. Jumanne nikuombe tena back on stage. Jumanne brings to the stage more than 15 years working into the innovation ecosystem. Akiwa amefanya kazi Costech, lakini pia as the founder and CEO of Sahara Ventures. Delighted to have you back on stage. Let's give him another round of applause. As you all know, recently CRDB Bank launched Imbeju program, and I'm delighted to bring the manager responsible for startup development and incubation. This is none other but Sharon Nsule. Please join us on the stage. Naomba tumpigie makofi. Do you all want to know about financing of startups and what it takes to really take off from the financing angel? I am delighted to bring policy specialist, inclusive digital economies from the UN CDF. This is Annette Kasebele. Annette, karibu onto the stage. Asante sana. So for once, and you'll all agree with me, where is Janet from EU? When she gave a remark, opening remark at the media symposium, she wondered there was no women, but today we have 3 women and 2 gents. So let's give them a round of applause. Asante sana. We are going to look onto really what it takes to, what contributes to the startup and early businesses environment in Tanzania. And with all your experiences on the stage, I believe it's going to be such a quick but very powerful presentation. We'll make it short and snappy. Let's try to really keep our answers short so that we don't take a long time, and we tackle a lot of questions that I would have. But I'll also open the floor for 2-3 questions from the audience, and then we'll have a wrap up to the session. So nianze kwako kaka yangu Charles Misheto, and this is for all of us on my panel. As you introduce yourself, I just read a brief of your bios, but we're looking onto business environment and policy reforms in Tanzania for startups and early stage businesses in Tanzania. Wewe ukiwa kama head wa SME banking, whereby all the innovators, most innovators fall into your space at the that level coming. But again, you also saw the transitioning of Stanbic Bank SME proposition from traditional banking to digital banking. What experiences would you like to share with the audience to as far as the business environment and policy reforms that are necessary to sing that transition? Karibu.
Thank you, Austin. My panelists, good morning, everyone. As introduced, my name is Charles, and I'm looking after SME banking at Stanbic. Been doing that for a couple of years now. Been in the finance industry for over 10 years, I'd say. So, yeah, we've done some of stuff very good, and there's a lot of room for improvement, and I'll mention a few. So for instance, if you look at the past 3-5 years, I've seen banks, including ourselves, we've come up with products that are created for startup, early stage businesses. For instance, 2 years ago, we went to the regulator to ask for permission to set up accounts for business that are not fully compliant. And this is one of the challenges that startups are facing. Because being compliant, being fully compliant, having all the governance documents in place is quite a problem. So we got that approval, and now we're able to sort of serve these pre-revenue startups. So I think that's a plus. And of course, if you look at most of the organizational financial organizations, we have desk or department that are fully dedicated for partnerships, especially with fintech and startups. I think that's also a plus. And another thing is the setup of initiative, the likes of Imbeju, Stanbic. We have business incubator space where we train, we sort of try and make startups to be investor ready. So governance, financial setup, all that sort of thing. But there's a lot to be done, I would say. So I hope during this discussion today, I'll get to some of that.
Asante sana Charles Misheto, head SME banking. Lillian, let me come to you. You are also a founding board member of Tanzania Startup Association. You are looking onto a very pertinent issue that I know you hold at heart, which is the environment, the business environment for startups and early stage businesses. Many startups either end up showing the first year or within the first 5 years. What is it that some of the factors that contribute to these, the fact that they begin, they mushroom, and then within a year, going to the 5th year, they're all gone? So what are some of the challenges that the businesses, early startups and early stage businesses face that really hinder them from thriving to, the enthusiasm that they started with? Karibu.
Asante. So I think the phenomenon you're talking about is a phenomenon that is not necessarily just ascribed to Tanzania, that is more or less global. And when you look at as a startup, I think I wanted you to mention the 4 startups, because there's different things. So whether you have a product that is actually a market fit and you're actually servicing your people, or you start with a passion and it's not necessarily bringing in the monies that you're supposed to bring in. Something that is actually close to my heart, which has been spoken about, and I think I would like to at least stand on that particular element, which is human capital. Human capital from the perspective of talent. I think in the initial presentation, to talk about that, the quality of human resource. Even Jumanne right now really spoke about investing in human capital, because technology, having startups, all of that is great, but at the end of the day, there are humans that actually need to be behind those desks. So then you're coming back to something as simple as the cost of labor, for the proper cost of labor. Ukiongea na startups hapa tukaambiana kwamba ni watu wangapi ambao unawahaya based on ile kabisa kwamba unamlipia NSSF, unamlipia WCF, unamlipia PAYE. ukija kuangalia uhalisia wa hiyo cost yako na unataka quality talent ambaye atakusaidia kwenda mbele, sio wewe ndio uanze kumfanyia training, inakuwa ni changamoto kidogo. So cost of labor is something that needs to be looked at from that perspective. Kwa sababu at the end of the day, we're speaking about 100,000 jobs that have been created by startups in Tanzania. Lakini tukija kuifanya breakdown, full-time versus consulting, na ni vitu vidogo vidogo, lakini this is something I think that really needs to be looked into. It's something ambayo tunaangaliaga zaidi kwenye financing. Tapata hela, lakini you still need people to sit and do the work. And for a startup to be able to hire good quality talent, it is expensive. Expensive in the sense ya kwamba you want to hire kijana ambaye ametoka ana degree, kumlipa $500,000, $400,000, wakati ya corporate anakuja nampa 1.5. Hapo $500,000 yako hujaweka ile ukamwekea pay, ukamwekea na sasa ukampa all these benefits, na anataka nini? Utasema umwepe na health insurance, manele ya NSSF haitaki. So these are things that are practical and on the ground that needs to be looked at. But to answer your question, I think just as a roundup, you know, getting the right type of people to actually help you run. As a startup again, your job is innovating. Usually, mimi kuna kampuni ya kwanza ambayo nilianza, I accrued a lot of NSSF huko ukiangalia kwenye finance na legal. You need support kwenye the finance, the legal, and the human capital HR, which also a good company. Squeezy company nyingi zikianza zinatafuta support kwenye HR support na kila kitu. So those are opportunities, which comes back to talent. Talent, unaweza kupata hela, unaweza kuwa na idea, lakini idea yako has to really be servicing a need so that utengeneze hela. So watu wakuweza kurun. That's my thing. That's my passion.
Asante sana, Lillian, and we can see that passion from the tone. Jumanne, over to you, and allow me to really pick your brains from the years you've transversed over the innovation space. Kuna kitu kinaitwa startup policy, Jumanne, and we would really wish to know, how have you been able to really navigate the policy, and if you see any relevance that we need this policy, and what should be done about it, other than compliance?
Yeah, so speaking as Jumanne Sahara Ventures, not Jumanne, board member of TSA.
It's on, it's on.
Yeah, because no one can fire me as Sahara Ventures. Yeah, so I think beyond policies, as I told you, policy basically, as much as it's very important, but it's a document. There are some things that has been done by the government, and we are not going to take them for granted. First of all, the biggest investor in the innovation ecosystem at its infant stage was the government. All of the things that was happening, they were around Commission for Science and Technology Tanzania. And then they evolved, they went to University of Dar es Salaam, whether it's living labs in rural areas, whether it's the work that Human Development Innovation Fund through DFID we are doing together, whether through the support that we are giving universities. Most of them were coming from the initiative that were done by the government. Specifically, there are some individual people who are very open-minded in terms of setting up this infrastructure for things to happen. And fast forward now, we're seeing things like the digital sandbox by the central bank. We are seeing the openness of Ministry of ICT to collaborate and work with TSA. So a lot has been happened in terms of moving to where we are right now. Kwa hiyo hatu underestimate effort ambazo zimefanyika kufika hapa tulipo. Na hata we're having this conversation right now. I remember back in the early days when we were doing Sahara Sparks for the first time in 2016, the whole room was a bunch of young people with only one old guy above 50 who was Dr. Mshinda, and the second guy came later who was a ambassador of Switzerland to East Africa and Zambia, my mentor and good friend, Ambassador Arthur Matri. So two old guys in the group, in the room of several young people talking about the future of startups and everything in Tanzania. So a lot has happened during that time. In terms of where are we heading with the policy, I know there's a lot of work that is being done by Tanzania Startup Association. I was informed, I texted Pregod this morning, what is the status of the startup policy, because I knew this would be asked. And he said now they're waiting for the launch date. There's a massive commitment from the Minister of ICT through Honorable Nape Nnauye to get this thing done. So we are very grateful for that. So that is where we are. But in terms of the future, we need to be able to future-proof some of these policies and documents that we are putting together. Technology is changing really, really fast. Now we are talking about ChatGPT 4.0, ChatGPT that can literally talk to you and tell you what to do. So basically, how do we create a document that survives those kind of things? It goes beyond pieces of paper. It goes beyond just having documents signed by the minister. It's about putting together the systems and structures that accommodate those changes.
Asante sana Jumanne. Systems and structures that accommodate those changes. This is also in line to, you know, synchronizing the system, synchronizing the space so that we sail onto the same wavelength. Sharon, allow me to come to you. In Beiju, delighted that you're doing a lot of things. And I'm sure Mr. Mafuru and the team in the house would really appreciate CRDB kwa kazi nzuri wanayoifanya kupitia in Beiju. And now, as the manager for startups development and incubation, I would really wish to know, these incubations mnazozifanya, what type of environment have you created kwa ajili ya hizi startups na early businesses ambazo nyinyi mnaona kama CRDB kweli zinaweza, ili those who do not get the opportunity to now be part of the Imbeju program can also probably see our best or learn the best practices from Imbeju program. Karibu.
Thank you, Austin. Good morning to you all. As Austin introduced me, I am currently the manager for Startups Development and Incubation at CRDB Bank Foundation. As CRDB, we saw the gap that was there from the corporate side, that we should come on board to support the startups in the innovation ecosystem. From the corporate side, where we seek to capacitate the startups and give them, well, from our financial institution perspective, give them the essential skills when it comes to financial literacy, but also connect them with different channels of the departments within the bank where they can support them with different services that we offer at the bank. So currently we have Imbeju program. Now this is our flagship program that was launched last year, 2023. And Imbeju program has two models. It operates under two models. One is the youth, that is startups, and then the other is for the women only. Now today I'll focus mainly on the youth. The startups that we are targeting are early stage startups with prototype, but at least businesses that have already been launched into the market and have already started generating revenue. So we provide them with capacity building, we link them to different markets, we also provide seed funding. And how do we do this? We conduct trainings leveraging on the expertise that we have at the bank, where we invite different employees or different members of the bank to provide these trainings, but as well as connect also with the experts in the ecosystem. So to answer your question, we leverage on the services of the bank because there's been a lot of accelerator programs out there, but then, you know, most of the times the accelerator programs that are conducted, they do not really target the necessary skills that these startups need. So you might find that startups move from one accelerator to another, and then after that you ask them, like, so what did you get from the other accelerator, you see? And for us, we emphasize mostly on not only funding, because startups might say we need funding, but do you have the necessary skills to grow your business? Do you know how you need to market your business? Do you know how to financially make your business stable so that you can generate revenue? So even as we have enrolled our Imbeju program, we made sure that we take them through step by step on what it takes to grow your business. We also give them business advisory, and as we conduct the due diligence as well, we make sure that we let them see why or what areas are essential for them to grow in terms of if you need funding. And to mention, our Imbejo funding is a revolving grant. It's a repayable grant, which is different from the ones that have been around, which is grant financing. So that is a bit different. And also we have discovered that the startups are a bit new to that. So we take them through, if you need to get this financing, do you have the traction that is needed? Because we cannot just give you the funds and then you eventually just misuse them. So we take them through that whole process of how to utilize the funds, how to manage the businesses, and in the end, connect them within the bank's channels. So currently, we also have startups who we have supported or facilitated partnerships within the bank through different integration, the likes of Lipa kwa Hapa payments and so forth. So as we connect them within the bank, they get to grow and then also expand their markets.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Let's give them a round of applause. Asante sana. Annette, you're looking onto the policies. You're a policy specialist with UNCDF, the Impact Capital Fund, or Capital for Development. So I would like to really grasp from you innovation, the space that we're looking for, startups as well as early businesses in Tanzania. If you ask any startup, of which again also my brother Charles mentioned earlier on, everyone would speak about financing, everyone would speak about capital, and I would really like to pick from you at this juncture to as far as the environment is concerned, to as far as the startup, what it takes. We spoke about innovation, either ministry or innovation space to grant that room for startups. What are some of the policies that probably need reforms or have undergone reforms? But specifically, I would like you to tackle onto the financing aspect of the startups and early businesses. Karibu.
Thank you. Good morning once again. Thank you for that question. I don't know if I can answer completely, but I think I'll just open up the discussion. As I have been introduced, I'm coming from UNCDF, so it's one of the UN agencies with capital mandate. So we do support startups in the ecosystem, and specifically those who are operating in the financial sector, so the fintech. And for us, we do kind of like different supports. I think some of my panelists have kind of like alluded to some of the acceleration work that is happening in the market and where we are part of. And from that space, we do provide both technical and a bit of catalytic funding. I wouldn't say more financing, but really small grants to keep the lights on and kind of like prepare these startups to be investor ready or to be able to access more of like commercial capital later on from other type of funders in the ecosystem. And in that space, I think we have kind of like also started looking at why, for instance, we don't see a lot of commercial funding coming to Tanzania in comparison to other markets or the big fours in the continent. And one of the exercises that we have been looking at, because we work closely, like I said, with the market, but at the same time with the government, particularly the likes of the central bank, with the regulator of the financial sector and other regulatory bodies. So we started looking at the different policies that are in place that could affect the flow of funding or the financing into the country. And there are a couple of things. So the research is not yet finalized, but we have some initial insights that we are picking up that I think will be relevant to be taken upon for consideration. And just to kickstart, I mean, we looked at our, I think most of you who have been in the innovation ecosystem, you have been hearing these issues around the requirement for funders or to register with the FCC. So this is the Fair Competition Commission. And the threshold for Tanzania, as an example, is relatively low when you compare to other countries. So I think for a lot of like external VCs, it seems like you have to go through a lot of hurdles, even if you are bringing small amount of money, because I think the threshold for Tanzania is about 1.5 million, if I'm not mistaken about the numbers. When you look at other countries, it starts from 10 million. So somebody who wants to put in at least even 3 or 4 millions in the country, US dollars, I mean, you start thinking of all these regulatory hurdles that you would have to fulfill. And that sort of like deter the inflows of capital, particularly the venture capital funding. The other element that we are picking up from the market is when companies are accessing external debt, there is a requirement in our laws that they need to register with the central bank. So you need to be able to register before your debt, your credit comes into the country. Again, that also kind of like present certain hurdles for people to be able to access capital from outside, because the registration itself might take longer, or sometimes somebody receives funds before the registration is completed, and that introduces a number of challenges in relation to that. But this is not to say it's all bad, because we are also seeing from the government side there are some initiatives that are taking place to see how we mobilize capital even domestically. So I know the Capital Market Authority started looking at crowdfunding regulations. This is a good move to ensure that people can be able to mobilize funding domestically from different people who are looking to sort of like support the startup ecosystem. We are also seeing the emergence of angel investor networks within the country. So some of them are happening organically, some of them are kind of like catalyzed by supporters in the ecosystem. But this is all in an effort to see how do we ensure the different high net worth individuals we have in Tanzania can also contribute to providing financing into our ecosystem. The last element that I would was to touch on, again, from where we stand, we have also been working with the Bank of Tanzania to see the possibility of facilitating flow of remittances and funding from the diaspora community, because we do understand we do have Tanzanians in different parts of the world who would like to support and provide financing that could be directed into some of these innovation ecosystem. So how do we address certain challenges in the policy and regulatory environment that can facilitate inflow of funding from the diaspora and migrants of Tanzania to invest in the country? So thank you.
Asante sana, Annette. Before you pass this, I'm doing my second round of questions starting with you, and thank you so much. I just want you to briefly mention, Tanzania has been, and Joe probably could add up, and probably Mr. Mafuru when you come to give us a quick overview. But we've not been attracting financing to startups and innovations in Tanzania as much as most East African countries have, including Kenya. And I'm going to Mtambalike later on to ask him why. Kenya's done 3 years of Innovation Week, we've done more than 10, but they've gone way ahead of us. So Annette, maybe to begin with you, what do you think that we need to do, be it policy-wise, be it environment-wise, to attract more funding for startups and early businesses in Tanzania? Sure. Briefly, snappy, and then I'm opening the floor after my final round. Karibu.
Okay. Thank you. So I think I started alluding to some of the policy-related issues, but at the same time, also I think there are aspects of the market that we need also to do something, because money would go to places where there is something to attract it. So from the ecosystem itself, I think we are moving in the right direction in terms of like supporting these young innovators or startups that are available, because you want, as an investor, you'd want to go and invest in a company that is promising, that is gonna give you a return. So probably that was kind of like getting slow in Tanzania, but now I feel like we are in the right space. And we are already starting to see some of these investors coming and looking at the market. I think recently we have seen a number of Tanzanian startups that have been able to raise a sizable amount from outside, the likes of Dawa Mkononi, if any of you have been following the space, or the like of Ramani. So that, I think, is already giving you good signals in terms of like how we could see Tanzania in the next 5 years or whatnot. But I think the other bit, if you allow me, in terms of like what we have been picking up from the study, why from the investor's perspective, Tanzania might be a bit difficult in comparison to other countries. I had mentioned the issue of FCC registration or notification, but also I think the capital controls that we have, in the sense that some investors are a bit worried to bring money into the country because the exit options are limited. And that kind of like puts them sort of like in a nervous state in comparison to other markets where they are pretty much free flows of capital.
Asante sana, Annette. Thank you very much. Let me come to you, Sharon, quickly. Embed is, again, a fantastic program, and you being the manager for startup development and incubation, I know there's a lot of research behind it, but there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that is associated with the startup development and incubation. My question is really very simple to you, and this is probably a marketing tool for you, marketing opportunity for you. How then are you able to share those insights, that knowledge, the research findings on how businesses can thrive, startups can thrive in Tanzania, especially to those who do not have access to Embed?
Thank you, Austin. Yes, so we aim to share this knowledge or insights to different platforms. First, we conduct different events and we promote startup businesses. We at CRDB do a number of events here and there. So we always want to invite or support these startup businesses to come and participate in these events through different exhibitions, but also we have a way to showcase the work that we do through different platforms, different online sessions that we aim to start doing. And we want startups to be open, like we create a platform for them to speak up, to speak their challenges, to speak the needs that they have. And then one thing I would say is that we started at Imbeju supporting startups, but then I would like to urge on the point Mr. Baraka shared, that partnerships are key, you know, when it comes to supporting startups in this ecosystem. And more and more organizations are coming up supporting startups, but then we need to join hands. How can we best support startups? And then the other is we all need to play our roles, you know? So from our end, we support startups from our banking perspective, but we need to know who is doing what level have they reached, and as the startups come to us, where are they coming from and what stage are they at? Because also when it comes to financing, we've also experienced this challenge where the startups are coming at a level they're at asking for financing. Our fund is a repayable grant, and the traction they have does not really suit the financing that we're going to give. So it needs them to come from a level where they've already been groomed, they've already been told the different ways on how to grow their businesses. Then there we can support them further. So I would like to urge all the stakeholders in the room that financing, startups financing needs us to join forces together, you know, as the ecosystem, totally. And also learn from our neighbors, from what ESOS shared in Kenya.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sharon. Over to you, my brother, J4, Yumane. I'd mentioned, I'd already hinted, so I'm sure you've had a couple of minutes to just think about, you know, when my brother from Kenya came and spoke about Tanzania celebrating 10 years, ANOS, when we're celebrating 10 years today of the Innovation Week and Innovation Space in Tanzania, they've had 3 years, and yet Innovation Space, and I'm glad you mentioned that you've gone to Kenya many times. So I would like you to really share the experience briefly in a minute of what is it that Kenya is doing differently from us, that they've, you know, started and yet gone very far ahead of us. I do not know how far, but ahead of us.
Yeah, let me try to do an elevator pitch.
A minute, yeah.
Okay, great. So I wrote it in my book. There's a chapter called The Kings, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and somehow Egypt. Now they're taking the lead. First of all, you should look at the core strengths of the 4 markets. Egypt is operating in the MENA region. They are trading with both Egypt and Middle East. South Africa, the culture of venture capital has been there for the past 20, 30 years. Kenya basically is an expatriate economy. There's a lot of expats in Kenya. If you look at these startups, there's a very famous Medium post that trended in the past few years, like who is a Kenyan founder. You can search that article and then you can see the actual portion of the actual Kenyan founder. I don't know, I don't want to get into that discussion, but is one of the core strengths. If you look at Nigeria, is diaspora community, returnees, founders, guys who have gone to UK and US, coming back home, partnering with the local founders, unlocking capital. People invest in capital. I mean, people invest in people who look like them, speak like them, have knowledge like them. So we might want to find our core strengths as a country if we want to unlock capital. Do we want to focus on expatriate? Do we want to focus on diaspora? Do we want to focus on the region? What is our core strength as Tanzania? The other issue is also the local investment landscape. How do we unlock the local investment landscape? If you go to Nairobi right now, wiki moja tunaweza wakutana na VC firms zaidi ya 25, 26. How many VC firms you can meet in a week? That tells you about why not the capital is coming. The other issue, of course, amezungumza hapo Anet, issue ya exits. People are very afraid. I'm putting my money, ila how do I get it back? Mambo yamekaa shagi. Kwa hiyo investors wanaogopa how they're going to get their money back. The other issue, of course, ni issue ya talent. Principle ya kwanza investors, they're investing in a person before a company. So do we have the right talent who can absorb the capital? Can we prepare our young people to be able to absorb the capital? We can be able to compete not just with the kings, but across Africa. The other issue is branding. We speak so much bad about ourselves, and we don't celebrate our heroes. Actually, we are against them. We pull them down. Galia kwenye social media huko, ana hela yule amesema tu lakini ana maona. So it's more of a cultural thing, but it's really, really bad. To an extent, some of our local companies don't disclose when they raise capital. And they tell you actually, some of them, they even written me an email, usiseme kama tumepata hela kutoka kwa investor, we hatutaki matatizo sisi. Umeona? Kwa hiyo, which is funny because if you don't share this number, it's very difficult to see Tanzania is performing. If you go to regional databases of VC, like the big deal, some transactions from Tanzania zimeandikwa undisclosed. Kwa sababu the founders who have attracted those capital, they're not even ready to disclose how much they've raised. So even the numbers that you're seeing like out there might be completely incorrect. Maybe we are performing even far way better, but most of the transactions are undisclosed. Kwa hiyo kuna issue pia ya culture, kuna issue ya branding. It's a more of a chaotic problem that requires systemic intervention.
Baraka, tunaomba uyachukue hayo. Kayasema mengi sana, lakini I believe they all aim at really improving our policies and the environment at large. Nashukuru sana Jumane, you've really poured your heart, and we look forward to your book. Lillian, over to you. Quick one for the next 1 minute. There's a statement that I really like. It says, the future is there for those who prepare for it. Sasa, nataka useme tu kwa kifupi, Lillian, policies, environment. Yeah, is Tanzania really, with the education system and the environment we have, are we really preparing? What Mr. Mafuru had mentioned, looking onto the audience that we have here, that clearly this is the future. Is the future? Are we really futuristic as a country? Human capital, you can mention that. Policies, you can mention. Yeah.
Honestly,
I'll put you on the spot.
Yes, you put me on the spot. I think I would like to talk with the facts. Are we preparing for the future? I would like to believe that we are, but sometimes I think our interventions come in a little bit at a later stage. Currently, right now, we do have SMEs that are looking for talent for specific areas. I think within the last 1 year or so, I've been having requests for coders, developers, etc. And these are coming out of UDOM. Like, that's actually my best place to go get such talent. But because they're not as many, then obviously they are also not willing to go to an SME. They were willing more to go to a corporate, or they're actually preferring to be, because I like to look at human capital. This is the engine of anything and everything. In terms of looking, I think we talk about Tanzania Development Vision 2025. Where do we want to be, the Tanzania in the next 25 years? Which are those sectors that need to be, we need the human capital in? Technically we needed to prepare them then, but right now then we need to put up those interventions. Jumane spoke about the 4 C's. We are busy trying to deal with going to universities. I'm creating a pipeline because you have Nigeria who is supporting and providing talent in your offices, but at the moment I'm providing them, I am also like, hey, this one, I've tried my best, but they're not the level that they're supposed to be. So you're now going back to universities, trying to put up basic digital literacy, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, or at least when you go to that office, you can be able to do a PowerPoint presentation. That is basic. You are starting to help them do basic communication. And when I go back, like if you look at oil and gas, when we look at all of these sectors as a nation that we are actually proceeding, you still are starting to see gaps. Do we have all the right talent right now? And I do know there have been interventions, and I'm not taking it away, of training, having sponsorship, of taking graduates to go study abroad so that they come back. But the thing is, when you look at when now we're needing the people on the ground, we still have not yet have that talent. So interventions are there, but I think with thinking through the next 25 years of where we want to be, we need to do a lot more. Go faster, like our Kenyan brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Asante sana, Lillian, totally. And Charles, Lillian, I'm still contemplating on a lot of wisdom that you've shared, so is everybody else on the panel. But Charles, to finish with you, how do we make startup in Tanzania and early businesses competitive given our existing policies and environment?
Yeah, thank you, Austin. So we have a well-diverse panel, so I'm gonna try and stick to finance, my area of expertise. So I think from the banking sector, financial sector point of view, there are a couple of things we can do better. So initially, when I started, when I shared that some of the things that we've done right, but there's a lot that we can do better. And I'll start with, if you look at most, so banks and MNOs, most of us are legacy players. If you look at our tech stack, our tech environment is it needs some upgrading so that it can be startup friendly. So the API framework, yeah, to have this sandbox. And when I say sandbox, I mean the actual sandbox without strings attached to it. So an area where we can create access for the startups to come and test their business models, like proof of concept. I think that's very important. Another thing is to sort of create a more simpler partnership framework. We need to walk the talk. So right now it takes about average of 9 months to lock a partnership between a bank or MNO and a startup. It's very painful for startups. If you talk to any startup, sometimes they won't even come to a meeting because they know this thing is going to drag forever. So I think banks, MNOs, the entire financial sector, we need to look at it and see how we can make it better. We can make it more simpler for them to lock this partnership and scale. Another thing is collaborate while competing mindset. I think it's time we put aside, move away from these zero-sum strategies that we have. Yes, for instance, banks and MNOs compete, but there are many areas that we can collaborate to especially drive the success of the startup ecosystem in the country. So I think we just have to move away from these short-term myopic strategies and look at the bigger picture, which is to serve the economy. Because let's be honest, the business models that we have now, especially in the banking sector, is not going to be relevant in the next 10 years. In 10 years, you're not going to go and ask SME to give you a piece of paper, historical data for you to finance them. That's not going to happen. We're going to have a whole different new model. So I think we need to change our mindset. And another is this is on leadership again. Thanks for mentioning human capital. So leadership is part of it. I think it's time to sort of have visions. I'm not sure if there's a clinical procedure you can do to instill visions to people, but we need to have the ability to read and interpret micro trends. Yeah. For instance, right now you have startups like Dawam Kononi. That's possibly the future of healthcare in the economy right now. But do we have leaders that are seeing that? Yeah. We have fintechs that are trying to sort of set up the infrastructure for SMEs to be financial ready. You have a number of platforms that are doing that. But do we have the leadership that sees that? So I think that's very important. But overall is to collaborate while competing so that we can make sure that we support the startup ecosystem. Thank you, Stan.
Asante sana Charles. Nimependa katika vile umesema we collaborate in a competitive mindset. Nimeipenda sana hiyo. I would like now to open the floor quickly. Maybe I'll take 2-3 hands. Nianze na Martin. Martin, karibu. You had your hands up. Kwanza kabisa kabla sijafungua floor. Karibu. I think it's on. It's not on. Two or three hands, and then we'll close up. Ooh, I have 20 hands. We'll only take 2 or 3 hands. Alafu nitaacha room for networking. Sawa, eh? Number mic hapa.
Thanks, Austin, for putting me on the spot. But yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Martin Arioba from Arioba Venture. Mine, I don't think it's a question. Maybe I'll rather just put 1 or 2 comments. Thanks, Innovation Week team, for organizing this and for your 10th year anniversary. Mine, I'll say, if I have to say one sentence, and piggybacking to what I think Dimane said, you have to be intentional. We all have to speak in one language. And when I say all, it means policymakers, corporates, accelerators, and startup founders themselves. If our intention is to bring capital to Tanzania, we send a lot of conflicting messages as ecosystem players. I wear different hats. Sometimes with my many Chinese walls, I don't know how I'm conflicted when I wake up in the morning, but when you look at the policy and regulators, policymakers and regulators, yes, and this discussion is about policy. And sometimes we talk as if policy, it stops everything. While what Dimane said in one of his presentations here, it's a paper. We can have a best policy, but if we don't implement things, it also doesn't make a lot of sense. But the other aspect of policy, it's we all, policymakers and regulators, they all have to show the same intention. And I'll give an example. Tanzania is the #1 mobile money.
Number 1?
Mobile money marketing.
Mobile money marketing, okay.
When mobile money started here, we didn't have policies. The policies came after that. But the regulator had the intention to see mobile money grow in this market.
Okay. As you wind up? As you wind up?
You might have to give me 2 or 3 more minutes. I'll have a lot to say. But today, when you're talking about startups, there's a lot of regulators in different industries. And you might find one regulator is championing that growth, the other one comes in and just wants to kill it. And so that conflict, it doesn't need new policy, it just needs collaboration from the government and its institutions. For corporates, hands up to Stambik, the work that Charles Guy is doing to promote in the ecosystem. I know CRDB, we keep people's money, so we can't fully give it away. So I think corporates can learn from this. Start with grants, get to learn more about the ecosystem, get to play more. And not everyone has money to give. Others have expertise. There's a lot of transport and logistics businesses in Tanzania. They can open up their businesses and support some of these startups that are working into ecosystem. For other accelerator ecosystem players, money will always come, whether we can exit or not. Even Nigeria and Kenya are suffering from exits, but money goes. So let's figure out the best way to link these startups, make them local relevant, and also link them to funding outside. The biggest risk that an outside VC will not bring the money here, it's if we are just saying, yeah, you can invest in so and so, but you're not investing your time, and we're not asking for money. Investing your time genuinely to see these startups growing. We can champion and publish reports and can do all these other things, but if you're not putting your heart and soul into the growth of that startup, somebody else can't come in. Right. Then obviously taking a bit of risk that local angels are taking. There's a lot of people investing, and they've been investing for the last 15 years, so that work is recognizable. The last part, to the founders, yourself, be serious. Nobody's going to take risk and put their own money in you if you don't show that seriousness. And if you don't dedicate yourself to the growth of the venture that you're building. If it's a lip service, it shows off. That's why Imane said, sometimes you see a lot of founders, same founders, for the last 10 years. And you can pitch that to an investor that you've been running a startup for 8 years, and it's still a startup. Something is wrong. Either there's no business case, either you don't dedicate yourself to the growth of that venture. Thank you.
Asante sana. I think something transpired jana as well. Mtu ana pitch kila mwaka, ana pitch too, they don't grow. There's a lady at the back, please. Keep it short and snappy. A lady at the back, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, sir.
This side, sijaona mikono, kwa hiyo ndo maana niko huku zaidi. Woo. I'll take 2 hands and then Dr. Amy and that gentleman, and then that will be it. Chap, chap.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm Ilham Wema. I'm with Dolphin Professional Services, but for right now, I'm speaking as an innovator. There's a question I've been having since the beginning of this wonderful event. Thank you very much for the event. It's been very informative. But I came initially because of a curiosity. In March of this year, there was a re-announcement of a scheme that has been around for around 2 years now, I believe. It's called the Developing Countries Trading Scheme, or as announced in this March, it's just called the UK scheme for trading, where I don't have all the information because it's been a little bit hard to receive all the information about how there's been reduced tariffs or taxes or something on imports to be able to develop our trade with the UK, I believe, because it's in the name. And my main question will be, how are we, like Mr. Yumane was speaking about helping startups, and everyone has just been around from Launchpad in the first days to everyone here who's trying to develop human capital. But how are we helping the startups, innovators, and entrepreneurs take a hold of this golden opportunity that I've been seeing and been very curious about? How are we helping them just take advantage of something that is here? That's my main reason for actually attending the event. Because of all our wonderful sponsors, I thought it would be a topic of interest and something to be highlighted.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you very much. Dr. Emmy? Anyone can react to any of these questions. Other than that, we take a group photo and we go. Yes,
mine
Dr.
is very brief. I'm just struck by what a speaker said, that Dar es Salaam will be the 3rd largest city. Did you say by 2050? 2030? Okay. Shortly, it will be the 3rd largest city. I think we focus a lot on Nigeria. I think I wanted to just implore us all to be very specific about some of the asks that we have. Every time I hear human capital talent, I ask myself, what is it? Is it co-education? Is it, what is that exact thing? And sometimes it's easy for development partners to throw money, put people in a room and say, tick the boxes, or put money in terms of access to finance. So I think let's be very clear on the ask. Is it leadership skills? Is it soft skills? Is it technical skills? So that we have the right investments in the right place.
Asante sana, Dr. Emmy. And the final question. Chap chap kaka.
Thank you very much. Sir, from Kiko Kiwanga from Tanzania Hubs Network, which is new for most people here. But on aspect of having centralized space for innovation. So for instance, in Tanzania Hubs Network, we saw also there is a question of, so there is aspect of inclusivity and diversity. And for instance, one of the challenges we have in Tanzania is like most of our resources and support, they are found in these major cities, especially Dar es Salaam and Arusha for this matter. But in the region, and I think this is important based on the kind of innovations that we want to have in our countries. So if they have to solve real problems that we have, because I think at the end or ultimately, innovation is supposed to solve real problems that we have in our country. So we will be focusing on funding, but if funding is coming and is funding solutions that are not actually addressing real problems in our in our country, it will also be a challenge because they can get funded, but they just die because they're not solving real problems. So I think real problems, we find them all over our country, and innovators from all other places in our country. So I think there should be a strategy on top of having maybe a centralized place for promoting innovations, but we should find a way or infrastructures and enabling environment to support all regions in Tanzania to have this innovation coming out. So this support supposed to go to these regions instead of, for instance, we were talking about Blela at first, it was only in Dar es Salaam. So someone who is want to register a company who is in Rukwa, they have to travel in Dar es Salaam. Right now, it's digitized and they can do it from there. So we should not make the similar problem. I mean, so that will be a challenge if we think like innovation has to be just in a certain place. It's a good idea, but we need also to think of inclusivity and diversity.
And this is where we're going to Tanga next, starting tomorrow. So just know that the government has already taken initiative. Makisat and everything is happening all and across all the peripherals of the country.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for all your contributions. Nadhani, there's not be any question to my panelists, so please allow me to request them to please stand up as we clap for them for their wonderful contribution. Let's take a group picture, and then I will invite Mr. Mafuru to come and give us his reflection, and Joe Manirakiza for a close-up. Naomba piga picha wetu.
So when I finished talking my opening remarks, I was debating whether I should stay or go. I realized my choice to stay was really a good bet. So I thank God that I was properly guided. I just want us to, but first and foremost, how many Tanzanians are in the room? By show of hands. I just want to be sure I'm talking to the right people first. I'm not being discriminating, but I have a purpose for this question. But can I ask you to stand up? I'm sorry. Can I just ask Tanzanians to stand up? I want to be sure I'm talking to the right people. Okay, that's a good number enough. Please sit down. So can I just ask then, how many of you, and God is watching, have read Tanzania Vision 2025? Just so they have an idea of what it is about. TDV 2025 that comes to the end in the next 2 years. Again, stand up. Be honest. All right? So it's very important, and please sit down, when we really talk about our development agenda and really wanting to become the country we want, to take stock of where we're coming from. I don't know how many of you were here the year 2000. Maybe some of you were born already, like me, and you're already aware of what is around you, right? And perhaps you felt the reality then. The people who wrote Vision 2025 had some inspirations and clearly wanting or viewing Tanzania to be someplace, somewhere. I remember pretty well, I come from the left shores, the shores of Lake Victoria. Back in the days, going back home, we used to go back through Kenya. So you get into a car, a bus, Nairobi, Tarime, Sirari, and then you're back into Musoma, and the same thing. And I'm sure for people from Bukoba, they will go around again through Uganda to that country. Today, you get into a car in Lindi, at the southern part of Tanzania, at 6 a.m. in the morning, and you'll be sure to be in Mwanza by dinner time, if you're driving a good car. So, and that's, back in the days, this used to be a 3 to 4, 5-day trip where people will pack chapati, mandazi, kuku, just so much they know. Before they get to Mwanza, they'll spend some 2 days at a place called Sekenke, you know, and that's when the kukus and the chapatis will be dealt with. It was massive. These are things of the past now. And that is what we call development. The aspiration of President Ben Mkapa, may his soul rest in peace. One of the things that he wanted to see was a learning community that has initiative. It speaks to the people in the room. And this is the point I'm talking about, the initiative. It is the innovation part that you're talking about. A society that is learning, but that is innovating. That is what he envisaged for Tanzania 25 years later. I really want us to really think, if Benjamin Mkapa was in the room today, listening to the conversation, would he look back and say, this is what I wanted to see in Tanzanians? If you ask me, somehow, somewhere, we've made some traction, we've made some progress, because we are thinking, we are innovating, and perhaps we can do better than that. So, do we want to sit back here and rant, to borrow Tambalike's words? Not really. We just need to say, it's a glass half fill. We need to fill the remaining part of the glass. If you're so pessimistic, you will focus on the empty part of the glass and say, you know what, this glass is not full. And you ignore completely the half portion that is already filled and totally discount the work that has been done to get that glass up to that level. I think the message I want to give you now is a reflection of the conversation today, this morning, and I'm sure over the last few days that you've been here, is to really take forward all the positives that we've achieved as a country, as a people, and capitalize on them, really avoiding the mistakes we've done. And I want to outline some of the few things that we've pointed out as blockages. It starts with the people. I'm sure I'll get everybody hands up. How many of you knows about Silicon Valley? Silicon Valley? If you have not heard about Silicon Valley and you're in the room, then you're lying to us. You're in the wrong place. Okay? So there's a story I want to say about Silicon Valley. That place has got tech community institutions like many of you. These people have access to capital. Like, we're not struggling. We're struggling for capital here. I hear people talking about startups, money here and there. They are surrounded with capital. Am I lying? They are surrounded with top talent. I hear people using the word talent here. Top talent in the true sense of the word. These are people trained from top schools, top universities, probably hands-on, and they know everything. And they probably have a market. And an American market is the largest market when it comes to technology stuff. So they've got capital, they've got people, and they've got the market. And guess what? Have you ever had, or how many of you have had a company filing for bankruptcy in Silicon Valley? There are companies filing for bankruptcy every single day. There's a company filing for bankruptcy, imefilisika, in Silicon Valley. Now, this is the point I'm trying to make. The difference between a company that files for bankruptcy in Silicon Valley and the one that is successful is the people that are running those. This word talent we're using here, we shouldn't be using it so loosely. I think Tambalike stole my word. When you have shaggy things, vitu vimeka shaggy, I followed that, right? I spent 21 years in banking, running one of the third largest bank in the country, lending money to businesses. I could read one proposal and say this is a shaggy proposal, and read the other and say this is a proposal, before meeting the person. And then when you meet the person, when they start narrating their business model, and when we say, so what is your business model, I see people changing colors. I receive a lot of young guys coming to the planning commission. We've got this idea, this is what we can do for Tanzania. Oh, fantastic. So can you please, let's talk about your business model. Business model means, how is money spent and how is it created end to end? Talk to me that process. If you cannot explain that process, no one is going to write a check, no matter how small that check is. Because I get confidence when I listen to a person who can articulate what they want to do. But if you've had, Tambalike has an app for 1x something here, and then you steal that idea and you copy paste and you come, you have no depth of what they're doing and you think it's yours and you come to explain looking for venture capital, forget it. So what I'm saying, becoming a talent is about checking several boxes. It's this box of understanding what you want to do and being able to put in front of the person that you're trying to speak to the value. It's about value proposition. I was the MD of NBC, chair of Tanzania Bankers Association, when M&O disruptors, I call them disruptors, came into the banking sector and stole the payment from banking to M&Os. And so I took my colleagues and went to Twin Towers to face the late Ben Ondulu, challenging him to say, so how do you do this? How can you allow these guys? We're building branches, we're selling, we're getting people to bring deposits, and here they come, they just plug and get the deposit. This is not fair. And this is what Professor Ndulu said, and may his soul rest in peace once again. He's my role model, by the way. He said, listen, bankers, find ways of working with M&Os. We are not changing anything. They're here to stay. And he reminded us that there's no regulation, and people are talking about policy this, policy that. M&Os starting doing payments with no payment regulations. I think they got signed 5-7 years later when there's already massive business and they were indispensable already. Nobody could think of stopping M&Os in the payment sector today. Not as a central bank, but not even as government. Today, government collects taxes thanks to M&Os. We pay taxes through that. It's an indispensable reality. It is here to stay. So when you're able to create value proposition, everybody will come around you and the policies will come. So let's not put the policies ahead of our innovation, because that's a stoppage. You will stop thinking because there's no policy. In fact, it is what you're doing that will design the policies. It should be the other way around. So I'm encouraging people in the room to not use this as a scapegoat. Policies should not be. Policies should follow innovations. If we put it the other way around, we're not going to make it. Vision 2025 is coming to an end. We cannot wait another 25 years to become a middle-income country. By the way, we're debating in the Planning Commission whether our next vision should aim to become a middle-income country. We're not sure whether we should aim for that. We think it's a low goal to aim at, right? And you know why? Because the year 2000, when the Vision 2025 was written, we were not at the pace of technological changes as we're seeing today. So we believe, with good use of technology and these all mumbo-jumbles of digital transformation we're talking about here, we should be able to leapfrog our development agenda. And therefore, achieving middle-income status should come in pretty soon than later. And then the target really should be changing to become a high-income country. And that's because we believe technology will help us. But we also think because we have a massive population. There are people who are looking at the Tanzanian population rate at the moment as a disaster, as a problem, as a crisis. Again, human beings are created in two shapes. They're pessimistic human beings and they're optimistic human beings. We want to challenge the pessimistic view of the population of Tanzania and use it as an opportunity. We've got some work to do, though, to convert this number of people that are being born in Tanzania to be productive human beings. And when they're productive human beings, then only we can fast track our growth. But of course, if you're going to have 10 million youth who are not doing anything productive but doing funny stuff in the streets, of course it's a disaster. But imagine of these 10 million youth who are productive and they can do one thing to add value in the economy, for sure, this massive population is going to be an asset that will pay dividend. And we talk about population dividends every day. So a big number of youth, coupled with good use of technology and innovation in a supportive environment, should really translate Tanzania to become a significant economy, a significant player on the continent. And perhaps, you talked about kings in the book. Maybe we'll be qualifying into a kings pretty soon as we make use of our potentials that we hear. So I just have to leave this place now. I just want to say, as long as we are able to show value to policymakers, and I'm truly happy that Baraka is here because he is currently running with a docket that will really bring all this together. We're very open-minded. I want to remind you once again, let us decide what do we want to see in Tanzania in the next 2 decades or so through the process that we're currently running of writing our Vision 2025. There's a full chapter, 2050, there's a full chapter, and it's not just a paper, it's not just a document. And I really hate, using documents and thinking they will take us forward. This vision that we're talking about should just do a guiding tool that will guide us into the next level of our development. So there's a full chapter in that blueprint that talks about digital transformation and how we can harness that to fast-track our growth. And the people in the room should shape that chapter. I want to stop here, and again, thank you for having me.
All right, good morning, everybody. Did I say good evening? I think it's a lot that has been said, and I thought the whole day is gone, right? Yeah, I mean, a lot has been said. If I add a word, I'm going to be diluting. So I think we've got a lot of content. I was actually challenging my comms team right now. They have to find a way of curating all this, because we can actually make it available. So I'm just here to thank everyone who has made this possible. I see that the house is actually overflowing, so we didn't expect all this turnout, but thank you very much for coming. But more specifically, I really wanted to thank Policy Forum. What we're trying to do is basically to reach out to any kind of stakeholder in the space, to collaborate, to be able to create and curate this kind of platform to keep on exchanging. I think what we heard today is going to take us somewhere else. So thank you, Semkai, for coming on. So Policy Forum is all about policy debates and all that. So I'm actually challenging him that we need to do a policy brief together so that we can be able to share with the government to kind of share some of the recommendations that are coming from this. Number 2, and more importantly, I really wanted to thank the government. Maybe what you didn't know, you've been seeing me stepping out and in and out. I was chatting with Mr. Mafuru here. As he said, he actually got here past midnight. And he made sure that he actually comes to this session. So that show, when we talk about having political will from the government, this is what we mean. Baraka arrived at 4 a.m. from Dodoma, but they are here. It's because we told them this session is very important. They need to be able to share what the government is doing and also get to hear what else needs to be done. So Mr. Mafuru and Baraka, I have no words to thank you. So asanteni sana. And don't get tired of us. Unfortunately, we have your numbers and email addresses, so we are going to keep on knocking. So whenever we feel like you have something, there are people who want to hear from you, we are going to be coming to you. So asanteni sana. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for the partners, the sponsors. You can see them all here. I don't want to repeat them. Thanks and for everyone that I have ambushed to be in this, Jumane, Annette, and everyone. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep on doing that. So asanteni sana and have a good day.